And Ulli, I want to ask you, do you find that creating comics now is easier for you at this point in your career?
It's absolutely, definitely easier. I am just more trained. After 100 pages, you get in the flow of a book.
I believe you. What do you think people might not know about the French? Because the French love comics. You said it yourself. What is it that people maybe in the United States aren't aware of about the French?
What the American people are not aware of the French comics.
No, what is it that the people in the United States are not aware of the French? Their love for comics, how it's a part of their life. What are Americans possibly missing out on?
Yeah, maybe it's not well known that the French comic scene is the second biggest comic market in the world after the Japanese, and the third biggest is the American. I mean, I hope I'm correct with the numbers, but the idea that the French country, which is not that huge, is producing so many comics every year, I think 5,000 per year, and reading them, it's not common knowledge, I think. The French really love comics.
And I'm going to just be clumsy. I want to keep to my questions. I'm really not going to deviate too much. Can you share with us your writing process? For example, one thing that I do with my comics and stories is I recite them in my mind, and then I tell the story to somebody and get their feedback. What is something that you might do? Do you do that ever? Do you recite in your mind, tell people?
It's actually a very good technique to tell the story to other people before, because you get to know what points are interesting and which are not. The problem with my comics is that the stories are too complex to tell it in a short form to a friend. I need the long run. I need the 100 pages, all these many pages to tell all the details, which are sometimes not very logical in itself. If I tell the story to friends, I mainly keep the fun parts, and I don't talk about all the little unlogic details which are contrary to the main story. I mean, today is the last day of the rest of the life. I was sometimes telling it to friends on parties to tell the fun story of the mafia and how bad they are. But I could never, ever communicate the real impact of the whole trip, because it's not only funny.
Oh, of course. What could you tell us about your art-making process? I'm curious about your color, since a lot of what you do, most or not everything, is all by hand. Is the color by hand, or do you do digital? Or?
The colors I only do on the computer, because I care for the black line, and that has to be strong and fixed, and then the color is only a second layer. And I want it flat, so it doesn't have to have so much character, so the computer coloring is just perfect.
And I think it's an aesthetic choice, right? You don't want to mess with the shading necessarily. You just want to keep it like more like a function. It serves a function. Or?
Yeah, I liked the old-fashioned printing, like 19th, beginning of the 20th century. The lithographs, which are very flat, and the colors are very separated. Like it's also. Where the line work is important, but not the shading of the colors or the light effects or all this stuff. I think this is not really necessary in comics. In the comics I do. Mm-hmm. I really like the raw drawings.
Let's see, where did I leave off? What can you tell us? Oh, well, not talking about the book, what can you tell us about the love triangle between the Ulli character, George, and Kim? Because, well, of course, there's Kim, who's a problem, and both men pop into Ulli's life, and then they're at the risk of popping right back out. What would you say to all that?
I don't think I really understood the question. What is with Kim? He was the problem, or what? I have to look at yours. Okay.
The problem is with me reciting my convoluted question. That's what it is. Basically, I'm asking you if you want to talk about the relationships, because they're problematic relationships and they're vulnerable relationships, I guess.
Yeah, I told this story about this particular problematic relationship because the problems are always the better story. I'm in a very happy relationship since 20 years with this man here. And we have no problems. I have no story to tell. I'm sorry. The triangle with George and Kim, I told it because I find it important to say that you don't really have to stick to the monogamous partnership. It creates a lot of problems also. And actually, I was during the relationship, I was very surprised how well it worked for a very long time. And I wanted to show that it didn't end well in the end. It's a pity. Yeah, maybe it makes it richer for the story and it adds other social aspects like, what is it called? Public, you know, if the husband beats the wife.
Yeah.
It's another social problem which I find important to talk about. It's not really such a big part of my life. I didn't experience it a second time. It was only one time. Yeah.
Let me see. Well, you are. Let me see. Okay, here. Next question. You are an instructor. Can you give us a taste of what it's like teaching comics? What are your students like? What can you tell
I teach drawing and comics and storytelling, and my students want to learn graphic design, and sometimes they concentrate more on drawing, but mainly they will not be professional illustrators in the end. They will be graphic designers and work on the computers. So I try to I do a lot of exercises with them to train their senses, their curiosity or their attitude as an author. And I think attitude is, or Haltung, what is the word in English? You know, you have you create a special, minds? What's the attitude? Eine Haltung, Autorenhaltung auf Deutsch, auf Englisch.
I don't know if there's a direct translation for this word.
Okay, sorry. Yeah. I think the mindset is important if you're an artist.
Yeah.
The way, the exact technique you use in the end, it's another story. I mean, if you use it to make films or comics or websites or whatever, the way how to look at the project and how to reflect it is always the same, I think. Yeah.
So I just have a couple more. How might you compare the process of making comics with other? Okay, how might you compare making comics with other types of art forms? Say painting, because I see painting as being loose at the beginning and then it tightens up as you refine. You see a similarity there with comics?
I always admire, I envy painters because they just can draw with their raw emotions and they don't have to think so much. If you do comics, you have to plan so much. You have to think about so many different aspects, and there are so many threads which you have to keep in hand through the whole story. I think it's much more easy to do a painting, a big painting or whatever, or a sculpture, than a comic.
Well, I ask because I love to paint and do comics, so I know it's different mindsets, but there's some similarities. If you want to do it that way.
Yeah, just drawing and painting nice pictures, it's much more relaxing. Comics is much more tense because you have to be careful for a lot of things.
Yeah. Is there any observations on the comic scene, or maybe what you observe from a place like this, staying cool, Does that get in the way to trying to, just as an artist, just maintaining a coolness? What would you say in general to having to maintain a look? That has nothing to do with being an artist, but you still have to maintain it in something.
Yeah, but I think I feel very at home in this scene. I don't feel at home in the uptight world, so I don't need to play cool or something.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
That's a perfect answer. Okay, and my last question, maybe you could talk about any creators that just wow you.
In the moment, I really like some of these female American storytellers which are telling about their lives, like Lauren Weinstein or Leila Corman or Kyla Roberts or Liana Fink. I love all these women very much. If I would be able to make an anthology here in America, I would collect all of them. And of course some other girls which I don't have in mind yet. I discovered them through the internet and they are really great. So female documentary storytelling.
Okay. Well, we can leave it at that unless there was any final thought, anything else you wanted to say.
For sure, I want to say a lot of things which I don't have in mind in the moment. Maybe I have to, maybe we could add this to the teaching part. If you are a student, if you decide to draw comics, you need to be very devoted and invest a lot of time and be very, very patient. It's not instant success. It's just so much work. So much work.
Exactly.
And that's why I don't, I teach comics. They have to draw a comic, my students, but then I don't tease them to do it. Because if you tease them, it has to be their own decision. They really have to want it. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Ulli.